Making meditation more fun with VR. Welcome back to Techstination. I'm Fred Fishkin. Joining us from Tripp, spelled with two P's, is Chief Wellness Officer Caitlin Krause. Hi, Caitlin.
Hi, Fred. Good to be here with you.
Nice to meet you. So let's start out with a little bit of background about Tripp.
Yeah. So Tripp is a wellness platform that goes cross devices. I don't know, are you familiar with VR? Are the listeners familiar with virtual reality?
I think some people probably are and some aren't, and I do have a headset, so I'm somewhat familiar with it.
Okay, wonderful. Well, VR devices basically are places where you can flip your brain inside out, go into a different world and feel transformation. And our founder, Nanea Reeves, had this idea to combine that technology with meditation for wellness. And so Tripp, as a concept, has that idea of journey within it, where you embark on a journey, you might be feeling a little bit tired or a little bit stressed, and you have this experience, and then you come back refreshed and renewed. So when she founded Tripp, it was about that concept of really meeting needs where we're at and taking us to a different level. And I'm Chief Wellness Officer at Tripp. For people listening who have been in headset before, Tripp is cross-platform. So now it's also augmented reality. There are different applications for different ways of accessing these tools for wellness. So it's not just one piece of hardware. It's really an application that goes across different platforms.
So many people meditate. Been popular. I've read books for I don't know how many years. Why VR? What does that bring to the experience?
Well, for me, you're asking me as somebody who's a VR passionate person that's been developing in the space for the past decade. What I would say, and my background is also teaching at Stanford. I teach in the wellness department, and virtual reality has a way to take us into an environment and take away any attachment to a fixed identity or any kind of conditions. I personally think it's why when you put on a headset, your mouth goes open in that big O. I don't know if anyone remembers the Palmer Luckey cover on Time magazine. That's one example. But the mouth being so open in that wide O is a signal that our bodies are really open. So when we're in these environments, especially in VR, we can role play, we can go into storytelling, and it's a world-to-world building story. It's not a frame-to-frame. So virtual reality has really special powers that have been proven in neuroscience to kind of change our attention and change the way that we are framing new connections. Our brain goes into a really plastic mode where that plasticity allows us to break through some of the things that might have been ingrained in terms of patterns. So one application I'm working on with Tripp involves a place for people who are in business to get together in groups and do collaboration exercises and creativity. It's called Empower by Tripp. So we can talk about that, and if you haven't been in Metaverse, I'd love to invite you in. But the short answer is VR is really powerful because it changes the notion of what's possible and puts people into a hero's journey kind of mindset.
And you're not just using the visual here. You're also using sound. Tell me about the role that plays.
Yeah. So the sound, and I know people here as listeners in Techstination are tech savvy. So the sound in Tripp is binaural sound. So it's coming from different directions. And when you have an experience, and I picture it all around you. So I have to give listeners, you can go online and have a trial of Tripp and try it for yourself.
In through the nose, out through the mouth. Picture your happy place.
Okay, let's try something new. Eyes open, mind open, world open. Let's go places we've never imagined. And discover who we can be. when we can be ourselves.
You enter an environment and the music is customized, designed to fit the generative animations that are expanding around you. And sometimes the beats are binaural. We have a music head, David Starfire, who's been really great at composing the music to really match the visuals. So you do have those visual cues and also the sound, which attaches in our brain to ideas of, if we think about sounds, ideas of creativity. Sound can link to memories. Sound can also set a mood state really well. So, in just 8 to 10 minutes, you could have a daily trip in the middle of your frantic workday and go into a totally different mood state, come back to what you're doing, and feel transformed.
There are different modes that you can enter here. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so I'm curious just to know context. Have you tried Tripp? Have you tried any of the calm or focus features?
I've tried calm so far, but there's much more to do, I know.
And what did you think? I just want to get a picture of what it was like for you.
I found it. I probably had my mouth open, like you said. Very visually, I don't know how to put it, different. I guess I grew up in the 60s, so Tripp would be the right word here.
Yeah, super creative, right? So calm has an environment. With Tripp, you have calm experiences. So as I'm describing this for listeners, what Fred and I are talking about right now is the on-demand part of Tripp, where you can go into Tripp as an application in your headset at any time, and you're solo. You're by yourself in this experience. And you can choose between calm or focus. So the calm experience that Fred has tried is something that's the moods and cues are developed to put you into a very lucid state where you feel as if you have equanimity. If you were to try the focus experience, focus is a little more attention focused, where there are different cues and the visual cues and the sounds are guiding you to really go into more of that high focus state. And there's a composer part of the menu where you can actually mix. So you can play the mixologist and choose some of the backgrounds that you'd like with the track for the day. And there are auditory cues where you can choose, do you want to have a voice-led experience where there's a recording to guide you through? So there's really a lot of different layers. There's also a drift option where so many people have trouble sleeping, or trouble getting into a more relaxed state at nighttime, or whenever they want to drift off. And so drift was specifically made for people as they get into that state of pre-sleep, and it's really relaxing. So I love everything about the fact that Tripp gives you those choices and that agency to choose how much guidance you want. And I come from a background where I've been meditating for decades and often mix and matching, will I use that in headset? Do I want to have an open eye meditation? And it's really special that you can do this using technology and actually feel more human connection to yourself.
And often, I guess the biggest, I don't know if you could call it an issue that you hear about from people who are fairly new to meditation is that I don't know if I'm doing it right, and my mind is wandering, etc. And I'm sure you've heard that thousands and thousands of times.
Yes.
But what does Tripp do to help overcome that, I suppose, would be one way to put it.
Well, I'd say the first thing philosophically, because that's totally true. So many people come to me, especially in my work, and say, Caitlin, I'm a terrible meditator. And it's kind of like they're saying to themselves, I failed. I tried so hard to meditate. And there is this concept called monkey mind, where the beauty of being human is that our mind is often dancing around a lot. And even psychologically, one of the first things we're doing is making lists and thinking of things, because we're hardwired and programmed to keep ourselves safe. So a lot of this talk that's going on inside the mind where it's hard to focus is because we're programmed for survival. But I would say we've kind of outlived some of the usefulness of that type of voice in my head going on overdrive. So what I tell people, which has to do a lot with the mindfulness principles underneath Tripp, is to befriend that mind, not to try to resist it so hard, but to mentally and emotionally turn that volume down. And you can do that when you're in an experience, just seeing the color, the vibrancy, the space between the notes. You give yourself a safe place to dwell in a landscape. And suddenly when I have thoughts that come in, or my thoughts want to jump around, I just remind myself that's part of the practice of being human. And I show up and I acknowledge those thoughts, and then I just view them from a distance and say, hey, I actually get to choose. That thought is not the fullness of who I am. And
Interesting. So you observe it more than...
Oh yeah, I observe it. I don't deny it, but I also don't feed into it and let it dominate, because there's actually much more beyond. As soon as you start identifying those thoughts as counterproductive to what you want for your purpose in the day, then suddenly they have less power. So I feel like Tripp is really a wonderful application for reminding people about that.
Is all of this solo, or are there group things too, or live sessions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the beauty of Tripp is that some of it's solo. So when we were talking about calm and focus, that would be a solo experience. And there are also group meditations that take place in social worlds in the metaverse. So people have regular meetups through a program called Together with Tripp. So groups have been meeting for years and having weekly meditations, sometimes social sessions, and those are all led by Jeremy Nickel and his team. So Jeremy came on board at Tripp after having developed these social wellness sessions. And in addition to that, some of the Empower programming that I was talking about with you for enterprise teams is also a way for people to get together in the metaverse in live time and still have that same Tripp experience in a social group. So I think I would add as a side note that meditation as soloists is sort of a Western concept, and it's been a long time of a tradition where meditations in groups are part of how it originated.
So tell us how pricing works. People have different options for this, right?
Yes. So pricing is a subscription-based price. So if people are, say, on an app, because it's so wide and Tripp is on different platforms, they could subscribe as an individual on a platform like the Meta might have a platform if someone has a Quest or Quest 2 and they want to subscribe. It's across all headsets. So Tripp is an application. You could also go straight to the Tripp website and buy a subscription to Tripp, and then you would apply that subscription to the type of hardware that you have. So that would be the individual pricing model. And then for enterprises, if you're with a group and you want to have a different type of payment structure, that's a different pricing model because it's a program where you have the live trainings and the sessions for your team. So Tripp has a lot of different options that meet people where they're at.
There's been so much written, I think, over the years about the real benefits, scientifically measurable, I suppose, when it comes to meditation. I don't know if you want to touch on one or two of those things before we wrap up.
Well, I think the science for me, I mean, you've talked about, that's my passion area. So different findings in research, both for the technology of virtual reality and also for the benefits of well-being. Tripp is putting those two areas and combining them in really meaningful ways. So I think that's super special. We at Tripp, we're not a therapeutic application. We don't make the therapeutic claims, but our offering is so closely developed with neuroscientists that it's exciting that Tripp, just to give an idea of scale, we have over 7 million sessions that people have had worldwide. So we make all of that data available to the researchers to then incorporate into their studies. So one highlight that I think is super exciting is that a team at NASA asked Tripp to be part of their research. So one of the NASA head immunologists, Brian Kruse, approached Tripp recently because he has a team that is actually located at the Palmer Station in Antarctica. The team is doing research on immunology and how to have the best wellness for the astronauts. And they're using 20 headsets loaded with Tripp experiences and actually documenting how well people have better immunity based on their wellness experiences. So I find the research really exciting because also the availability of something like Tripp in technology can be so widely distributed that it's accessible to more people.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
For more information, where can people go?
So for more information, people can go to tripp.com, and they can also seek me out if they would like to talk or have an experience in the metaverse. I'm Caitlin Krause. I'm on that page. You can also check out some of our latest research that we're affiliated with. You can read more about Tripp, and if you're curious about diving in, I would say to people who feel like they haven't tried VR before, it's a great place to start because it puts you in that wellness frame of mind.
Just wonderful. And it's TRIPP. Caitlin Krause, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.